And we have the honor and unique opportunity to hear from 3 World War II veterans. To get us started, Ray Hughes is going to lead us in the pledge, then introduce us to the veterans from the USS Hornets group. Thank you. If you'd all please stand.
If you join in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for showing up tonight. It's my honor and privilege to be associated with these men, my heroes, my boys. We all belong to the USS Hornet Breakfast Group, a group of veterans from all periods, and we meet the first Friday of every month at Twin Towers on Hamilton Avenue in Cincinnati. We never have less than 80 men show up each month. It's living history. It's a place where they can meet and talk with their contemporaries. There's no bragging ever done at these meetings. It's all just conversation. You know, where were you at? Oh yeah, I remember that. My brother was there too. It's just living history, and it's my pleasure to be my privilege to be the historian of that group. One of the men that you see on the flyer that you were given is unable to attend tonight, and that's Bill Hargis. Bill was on the Callahan, and the Callahan, he's not here to tell his story, so I'll briefly tell you. The Callahan was sunk off of Okinawa in April of 1945 during the invasion. And Bill spent 9 hours in the Pacific Ocean treading water most of the time. If you can possibly imagine that. He did have a crate at one time, but an explosion, the ripples did away with the crate that he had. He was rescued the next morning and taken to a hospital ship. But Bill is not here tonight to elaborate on his story. We wish him well. He fell, and he is recovering. He did not break any bones. And he's undergoing therapy now to get his strength back. So we keep him in our prayers. At the far end of the table is the youngster of the crowd. And that's Corman, medic to you guys that were in the Army and doctor to all of us on Iwo Jima. Noah spent all 36 days on Iwo Jima taking care of our boys.
You ready for me to get up?
Not yet. I'll let you know. I'm surprised he could make it here. He was out with his girlfriend all afternoon.
My son was
Setting-
getting back home from work. That's why I'm late.
Sitting in the middle is Clarence Arand. Clarence is a very unique member of our group, and Clarence graduated from a trade school. And normally, you know, you always hear about college graduates being pilots. Well, Clarence was a pilot on a B-17 with 10 crew members on the ship with him in 33 combat missions in World War II. And so that should tell you how brilliant he is. You didn't get to become a pilot on a B-17 by being a dropout. And last but not least, certainly, is the elder statesman of our group, Lieutenant Robert Doolan. Bob is 100 years old. You're going to find him to be very articulate. He has a wonderful story. I'll just give you a little hint about it. And he'll tell you the story in more detail, but he was shot down and escaped the Germans for 21 days before the Gestapo and SS whacked him in the head with a billy club. Then they sent him to Stalag Luft 3, the home of the Great Escape. You've seen that movie, and that's where Bob spent his time. I've taken enough time here now. So Bob, if you will, share your story with us.
Good evening. Actually, I won't be 100 until next March. But,
You had to make me a liar then.
yeah, no, I didn't make you a liar. You did that. But, as he said, I was flying as a navigator. I had washed out of Army pilot school. I can fly a Cessna, but I sure can't. Well, a B-17 is easier to fly than a 24. But I was flying out of England, and on August 12th, 1943, our target was Gelsenkirchen in the Ruhr, which is an industrial valley. And if you bomb Germany from England, you've got to enter the continent over Holland. So Holland was a graveyard for downed ships. The minute we entered Holland, the enemy fighters came in, two or three Me-109s, and one of them got a lucky burst and knocked out our number 4 engine. That's the far right engine. We can fly with 3 engines, but also lost half of our gasoline from that tank. But we went on and bombed the target, and then the flak hit us. Flak, to me, was more dangerous than fighters. You can fire back at a fighter, but flak, near the target, you've got to fly exactly straight and level for 7-8 minutes, which gives a good time to get 2 bursts in at you. Anyway, we got a bad burst in the waist, and 4 men there were seriously injured. And the pilot, I don't know how this happened. We were all experienced, but 5 men in front, 5 men in the back. We never got on the intercom and found out what was going on in the other one. But anyway, the pilot put the plane in a steep dive, and these 4 wounded men jumped out of the back. And we leveled off at about 100 feet, which is, the fighters can't fire at you very easily then. And we were flying south off the target, and these 2 Me-109 pilots became good friends of ours. I mean, we flew with them over an hour, and they were motioning us to land, and we've got machine guns trained on them, and they were motioning. But anyway, we became good acquaintances. I gave the pilot a course for England, and we flying west then, and when we reached Holland, the pilot asked me how long it was going to be to get back to England. I told him an hour and a half, and he said, "We don't have enough gas." Well, that's one of those things. You can say, well, the gauges are always wrong, but to have any control, we have to have gasoline. If we run out of gas, we can't make a decent forced landing. So he decided, we'll take her down. Found a nice level spot. Actually, it was a bicycle path. And we crash landed, and 6 of us still on the aircraft. And we got out, and I pointed south. I said, Spain is that way, start walking. And you're going to say, well, you can't walk to Spain. If we stay with the aircraft, the Germans are going to be there in 5 minutes. So we were lucky. There was, right off this bicycle path, there was a woods. And all 5 of us got in the woods and started walking south. Later in the day, the 2 gunners veered off a little bit to the west and were going south parallel with us. Co-pilot and the pilot and I, the navigator, stayed there. We walked in the woods for a while, but it was too slow. So we got on a little path, and we were lucky enough. We got away from the airplane early enough that the Germans didn't get there. we walked till about noon, and there was a farmer in the field, and we had heard that there was resistance people forming a pilot line to get downed airmen back to England through Spain. And I gave him, I was wearing a high school ring. I didn't go to college, right? I was wearing a 1935 high school ring, and it had St. Xavier, Cincinnati, Ohio. And I thought, well, if I'm going to try to be a civilian, I can't have a ring with English writing on it. So I gave it to him. Later on, I tried to get it back, but that's another story. You watching the time? Yes. We walked down until almost dusk, and we're in a little grove of trees, pretty beat, and like a Hollywood movie, this man comes walking up, pushing a bicycle, and he comes and says, "I'll try to help you." Well, he was with the underground that was forming this pilot rescue line. We walked to his house. I'm sorry, I'll look this way. I walked to his house, and we got civilian clothing. I don't remember at all what color slacks I had, but I'll never forget the shirt. The women will know what I'm talking about. That was a pink tone-on-tone shirt, shiny threads. The men don't know what I'm talking about, but you know. Tab collar. I wore it for 32 days straight. It wasn't too bad. It was cool. It was August, and it wasn't too bad. We stayed at his house that night, and the next morning, we started south. A man came with a Opel, which is a German Buick, essentially, and the Dutch weren't able to get gasoline, but he had a little stove of some kind on the back, which burned briquettes, and it made a gas, not a liquid gas, but a gaseous gas, and the engine would run on it. It knocked, but it ran. Well, anyway, we went any number of miles south, and we stopped at a farm. And if you've seen anything about Anne Frank, we stayed in these safe houses, and most of them had a false wall in one of the rooms, and we were under there, and they have steep roof. We were under the eaves of the roof, under the roof, but not inside the residence premises. And we stayed there, and these people were the bravest of all, because this man, his wife and 2 children, maybe early teens, and she'd wake up screaming in the night, "Got to get him out." And he'd say, "I can't shoot Germans, but I can do this. I have to move faster." Anyway, we were loose for 21 days, my co-pilot and I, and we're trying to get to Spain. We got to the Belgian border, and we found out there that our pilot had gotten into France and was captured. Was in La Fresnes jail in Paris, and the 2 gunners had gotten into Belgium, and they were in jail there. So it's now September. It's getting cold in the Pyrenees Mountains. Change of plan. They said, we'll go back up to the North Sea. I have to accelerate. We took a 2-day train ride and got off in The Hague, the capital, and walked out across the street and got on a trolley car and rode out into one of the suburbs. And then we started walking. When we would walk about 200 feet apart. So if someone stopped the first man, the other one could duck into an alley or anything. Anyway, I walked up to this safe house. I just touched the knob, and I'm in it. The door shuts behind me. I'm in there. I got 4 men on me. One of them hits me on the head. Another one's got a gag in my mouth. Another one's got handcuffs on me. The 4th one pushes me to the floor. They were Gestapo and SS. Anyway, they took us to the big federal prison in a suburb of The Hague, Scheveningen. And the usual stuff. Robert Doolan, 2nd Lieutenant, U.S. Army Air Corps, 0795218. And then you stand and wait. It's words on your nerves. Finally, they pushed me into a little room, and there's a desk in there, huge picture of Hitler on the wall. And you stand another half hour, and this Gestapo officer comes in there, Heil Hitler to the picture, and he bumps into me. He says, "Lieutenant Doolan, is this the new American uniform?" And he was sarcastic. We went around for 2 hours. He said, "We can shoot you, you know, you're a spy." Well, anyway, I have to get on. We stayed there we were there. We were captured September 2nd, and we were stay there being questioned until September 18th. Then he turned us over to the Luftwaffe, which is the Air Force, and then we were interrogated again. Now, the Gestapo didn't ask a single question about the war. All they want to know is who helped us. Then we had the aviation questions. Then the Luftwaffe sent us to Stalag Luft 3, which is in Poland, about 85 miles southeast of Berlin. Wonderful camp. At that time, there were 4,000 prisoners there. I was number 2555. It kept growing as we got more bomb groups in England. I couldn't talk to anyone who was a prisoner of Japan or Nam or Korea, because they would have said, you weren't in a prison camp, you were in a country club. Because we complained about, but actually we had barracks that were as good as we would have had in an army in the United States. Food we didn't have. The German ration was not too good, but the Red Cross, I can't say enough good about the Red Cross. I mean, they were sending a Red Cross parcel with 7 pounds of food. Corned beef, Spam, powdered milk, chocolate, Nescafe, and 4 packs of cigarettes. If any time you see a movie, they give a man a cigarette. American cigarettes are currency anywhere in the world. Not any other cigarette, but American. Anyway, at that time they were building new barracks. Flying with us was a Colonel, Delmar T. Spivey. And he had gone to West Point, gone through pilot training, and his job on that mission was to find out why our American gunners weren't shooting down more German airplanes. And he found out they weren't using the ring and ball sight. They were just spraying lead. But he didn't get back to tell about it. Not then. But anyway, it was, as I say, there were about 2,500 prisoners. Mostly English at that time, some French, some Polish, but as months went by, more and more Americans, because we're bringing more groups over. If you ever saw the movie The Great Escape, it's a great movie in its own right, but it's a true movie. Everything in there happened except the bicycle ride, the motorcycle ride. That was the only way Steve McQueen would do the job if you let him ride his motor. It didn't happen. But everything else, I knew those people. I was there for 16 months with them, and they're real people. What time we got? You got plenty of time. Okay. We did have a lot of things that you wouldn't believe. We had a library. The YMCA sent books, and we could get books. Our parents could send money to a publisher. We had actually built a theater, put on plays. The YMCA sent us musical instruments. We had a band. They sent us baseballs, soccer balls. We cleared a field, and I was there for 16 months. We knew exactly what was going on. We had the German newspaper, the German radio, which gave a full account. We had a secret radio getting BBC messages to us. And if ships and trains could move, we got Red Cross food fairly regularly. We were hungry, but never really emaciating. That was then D-Day, of course, was the invasion, the crossing of the Rhine. The big thing was the Bulge, December 16th, 44 to January 21st. 45. It was the biggest, most bloody battle that the Americans were in Europe. There were 90,000 men, Germans, and 90,000 Americans were either killed, wounded, missing, or captured. It was unbelievable. And all the while, we're getting more prisoners. If anybody here was a ground soldier and is captured at that time, they didn't get this really nice camp that we had as Air Force people. The Geneva Convention stipulates what kind of treatment you get, and this is not good, but officers get a little better treatment than enlisted men, below sergeant. That's why all of our gunners were staff sergeant or tech sergeants, because we knew they would be treated better than if they were, or yeah. This went on, as I say, the food would be up and down. There was time when the German head ration was not very good. They had two soups, Green Death and Black Death. And they got no meat. Once in a while you got some kind of meat, but blood sausage, you got blood sausage. Brown bread. A German loaf of bread weighs 4 pounds, 2 kilos. And it's very heavy, and it also produces a lot of flatulence. But it was nourishing, and people that didn't really like what they ate, they'd say it had wood in it. It didn't have sawdust in it. They just put the whole grain in. It was chaff, but it was very nourishing, and it kept you alive. We knew about, as I say, we knew about the invasion and the Battle of the Bulge. Now, all this good stuff that I'm talking, it's only the first year. From then on, things went down as the Germans couldn't get stuff there. But Christmas 44, Christmas 43, our slogan was Home for Christmas 44. Christmas 44 went by and we said, Home for Christmas. No, it's 45 and we're still alive. But we were still confident we're winning the war because the Bulge was in full stare, so it was just wearing down. At the 20th of January 45, the German says, the Russians are only 70 miles away. How much? 5 minutes? The Russians are only 60 miles away. They said, we're going to walk out of here. Now, at this time, there were 10,000 prisoners there. And you can imagine 10,000 men walking on a road. We were afraid some fighter pilot would think we were an army. But it was the worst winter. They had 8 degrees Fahrenheit and 6 inches of snow. Anyway, we walked for 5 days. We walked 24 miles to a town where we get a railroad car. We rode railroad cars then to Munich. And then they put us in a big prison camp, which was all ranks, all branches of the service at Moosburg. That was miserable there. No showers. We got showers once a month, or solid look, but no showers down at Moosburg. And all the while the war's getting closer. April 29th, April 26th, 27th, we know where Patton is coming west. Going east, and we know where the Russians are coming west. They're fighting us. They want to take as much land before Patton takes it. And April 27th at 12:30 noon, a tank burst through the barbed wire fence, and it was liberation. There, as I say, there were, you won't believe this, but there were 100,000 prisoners. There were 20,000 Polish prisoners they had brought in. There were 18,000 Russian prisoners, and then there were all the prisoners from the Bulge. There were 10,000 airmen from our camp, and I can't imagine 100,000 slices of bread or anything. So food was scarce. But worst of all, there were only outhouses for about 30,000. So it was full of something. Eventually there was urine and excrement right where we would count it twice a day, and we would have to stand while they count us. And eventually our American officers said, look, tomorrow we don't get counted unless they do something about the latrines. Well, we had, in the meantime, we had constructed slit trenches, about 2 of them about 100 feet long. And it was a standard expression. If I ever fall in there, don't pick me up. As I say, Patton liberated us there. And go.
Forgive me, because this story is so much more involved. And I worry about this guy. He takes communion every day. It must be. But his story is so much more involved. Maybe sometime later we can do this again where we got an hour for each one of them. But we better hurry. Like he said, he's going to be 100 in March. Our next speaker is one of our heroes, Clarence Arand, A-R-A-N-D.
enough they can hear me. Yeah. Yeah. It's on?
Yeah.
Okay.
20 minutes.
It's
20 minutes.
That's all I can give you.
Okay, good enough. Yeah. Well, during my brother, who lives next door to me, by the way, he's a year older than me. Him and two of our buddies went down on Thanksgiving in '42 and enlisted. I was 17 yet, and I told my mother, I said, "Well, they're going to get me next year because of the draft." And I said, "I want to go down. This way I can stay with my brother." So she okayed it. So we went down there, and we were called up in February of '43. And we went to Indiana, and then they sent us down to Florida, Miami Beach, Florida. And we stayed down there for about 2 months. And they sent me to South Carolina, but they sent my brother's records with me. So instead of sending me back, they sent the records back, and that way Bob ended up going over the Pacific, and I went to the Atlantic, over to Europe. And but I'm glad I did, because, well, I'll talk about that later. But anyway, we went down there, and then I went to Mississippi, different places in the eastern part of the country, all different fields, and I started flying a Piper Cub. Never flew a plane in my life. And flying a Piper Cub, we got 10 hours. And then we got sent up to St. Louis. Anyway, then I started training in the B-17, BT basic trainer, then advanced trainer, and then eventually I got into B-24 at Chanute Field. I was over there, and that's where I got all my training to learn how to fly. And maybe I better tell about the crash. Yeah. Before this ever happened, I was at Pueblo Air Base. I was at Pueblo Air Base, and well, we trained out there. At that time, though, but I had my crew, all except my navigator. And this, anyway, Rick Penna, he joined us the same day that we were out flying and come back for emergency landing. We lost an engine. And they told me, as I was coming in to land, they told me to go around. There was planes taking off. So I went around to the right of the runway, and that was where the Rocky Mountains were. And I got about a mile over there, and that's when all engines quit. And there was nothing I could do about it. Couldn't land, no landing gear or anything down. So we crash landed the plane. I think my son, Dave's got a picture of that, eh? I think my son's got a picture of the plane. Anyway, so from that time, then my navigator, he was joining the crew that same day. He arrived at the base, and he asked where the air and crew. They said they just crashed. So, and he didn't think nothing of it. He joined the crew. I don't know whether I would have, but he did. So, anyway, nobody got hurt. We all got out with nothing. And they made you, when this happened, they made you go back up and fly for another hour, an hour and a half. Well, they took us to the hospital to check us out. But then when we got back, we had to go up and fly for about another 2 hours. That was to keep you from getting scared, nervous. So we went up and flew, and then we come back down, and then, that's about it. Then Rick joined the crowd, and we had 10 members of our crew then. By the way, there was only 2 of us left. Then we come back down, and then from there I went to, when Was it Chanute that went? Yeah. From there, From there, we went to Chanute, and then they sent us over to New Jersey, where we had to get on a. Oh, by the way, we got on a boat. We got on the Queen Mary to go overseas. We didn't fly over. We took a Queen Mary over, and it was about 20,000 troops on that boat, and we were left with a convoy out of New Jersey base there, but next morning, look around, and there was nobody out there but us, the boat. And my name started on A. I sat at the captain table, so I asked the captain, I said, "Where's the rest of the boat?" He said, "Oh," he said, "we left them." He said, "We outrun them." And he said that the Queen Mary could make as much as 42 knots if they had to. And I thought, man, that's pretty fast for a boat that big. Anyway, it took us about 5 days to get over to Scotland. We landed in Scotland. We got over to Scotland. And that was my birthday, by the way. My birthday is Christmas, so we got there. And then from there, they sent us down to England in the 3rd Division. And at that time, the 3rd Division was just changing over from B-24s to B-17s, because I didn't fly a 17 until I was overseas in England. And I didn't fly another B-24 from that time on. B-17, they trained me in B-17. I had about 3 weeks training. And then about 3 weeks training. And then, oh, by the way, I learned a lot of this stuff after the war. My crew never told me anything, what's going on. But anyway, my radio operator, he's still living, by the way, and we went down to see him in Alabama. And he was telling about, we fly at 30,000, maybe 35,000 or something, and it gets pretty cold up there, 30,000. It'd be 30 below, 35. One time it was 55 below zero. And anyway, they would take a sandwich. Well, we'd be flying maybe 8 hours, 9 hours, and they get sandwiches from the cafeteria, and they take the cover off of this radio box, and they put the sandwich between the vacuum tubes and that control box, and they leave it there all fine. It wouldn't keep it warm, but it would keep it soft, so they could eat it, because other than that thing would be froze solid up there. And the one time, my co-pilot, Lucier, he was a big husky guy, and I was glad to have him, because anytime we had problems, Lucier would take the controls. But we were on a mission, and I don't know which mission it was anymore, but we had flight suits, and they were wired for to heat, because it gets 30 below or so, it's cold up there. Anyway, under his right armpit, it shorted out, and smoke started coming out of there. And poor Lucier, we had to go on that mission and all the way back. He froze to death up there. There was nothing, nobody could do anything for him. But yeah, it was funny seeing that smoke coming out. Do what? Yeah. But anyway, I got my one gunner, Bill Huber. He kept a diary of all our missions. After we got back from the mission, he kept all the information on it, and I got all that. That's all the records I got, by the way. And he's got that down there about the Lucier and that, and also, and if you read them things, he's got every mission. He's got there what the mission was all about, and sometimes we get hit by flak almost all the time, but every once in a while we get hit with fighters. But if you got hit by fighters, you didn't get hit by flak. If you got hit by flak, there was no fighter, so we knew that. And let's see, what else? There much much more to talk about.
How many missions did you fly?
Oh, well, we had 32 missions over for Germany. 3 of them over Berlin, and I don't know, Dresden. I got a picture of Dresden at the time Dresden got tore up. 2 days in a row we went on the Dresden flight, and boy, that town was a wreck. And we had a lot of good dog fights. You said, well, hey, I'm flying a plane. You know, there's nothing I could do. I just watch, and they had some very good dog fights out in front of me. And then every once in a while, one of the planes would get hit, and down it would go. And I've seen one mission, flak hit a plane, and it just almost tore it in half. The whole wing went one flying out, and the rest of the plane went down. And nobody got out of that plane alive. But and that's about it. You know, it was about the same. And then Bill Huber always talked about, oh, I think tomorrow we'll go to the flak shack. Now, people didn't know what flak shack meant, but what it was, a 3-day pass to go to London, Piccadilly. And that's where some of them guys were married. They went up to see their girlfriends. 3 days.
I was single.
Huh?
I was single.
Would you go to flak shack? You were single, huh? No, I went up there once, but that was it. And, well, I stay in town and have more fun in town. I went up there in London. And I think that's about it. And then we got, towards the end of the war, we brought back prisoners of war, Americans that were liberated. We brought them back. Twice I did that. And then we had three missions where we went over and dropped food for them Dutch. They were starving. And man, and we flew in, this is a funny part about it, we flew in at 300 feet. I mean, you always reach up and touch. And opened up Bombay, and then people be right down under there, and you think they're going to get hit with the damn stuff coming down. But they were so desperate for food, as soon as they hit the ground, boy, they would gobble it up. And my records there, when we took off, we always get our flight plan. And on it, at the bottom there, it said, no buzzing. I was like, no buzzing? How the hell can you buzz any lower than 300 feet? I still remember no buzzing. Of course, we wouldn't have done it anyway, would we? No.
You went up to the north of the prison camp to liberate them, to bring them back in.
No. I went over in New York, over in France. Over there, I don't know where we picked them up at a certain town over in France, but they were liberated from over that way, and they could have come from anywhere. I don't know. We just brought them back over to England. I think that's about it.
You know, what Clarence doesn't tell you is that on these missions, they have what's called an IP and an AP. And that's the initial point and the aiming point. And once Clarence hit that IP, that was turned over to the automatic pilot, correct? And what he done? And they had to fly in a straight line. There was no deviation until they got to the AP, which is the aiming point. And that's where they had to drop their bombs. All during this time while he's flying in there, he's being fired at by anti-aircraft. And not that anybody's proud of people who were killed or who got the most killed, but let me point out something to you about these airmen in Europe. There were more Air Force men killed in Europe than the Navy and Marine Corps combined. Each time one of those planes went down, there was 10 men. And most of the time, when those planes, 1 day, 2 days, there were 60 of them that went down. And do the arithmetic, that's 1,200 men And he is so, another school teacher here. Let me exaggerate. I was in the Air Force, okay? He's so humble in what the story he just told you. And thank you so much for your service. Now, last but not least is the youngster of the crowd, Noah Switzer, Navy corpsman on Iwo Jima, all 36 days. And it's hard to tell his story without being extremely emotional, so I will not try to tell his story. Noah, if you would, please. Noah Switzer.
Thanks, Ray. First of all, I want to thank all you folks for showing up here tonight to listen to what went on back during 1941 and 2 and 3 and 4. Otherwise, you might have been speaking German or Japanese. Anyway, when I walked out of Holmes High School February the 2nd, 9 days past my 17th birthday, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I had to go down to railroad property at 4th and John and get my dad off the railroad to come up to the federal building to sign my papers so I could get into the Navy. And while I was there going through my physical and everything, this lieutenant, I asked him, I said, "Why are you putting my initials in front of Cincinnati on all these papers?" And he said, "That's not your initials." He said, "That's," and I told him, I said, "Well," I said, "you get smart with me, mister, and I'll go across the hall and join the Army." Well, he made an about face, went to his little office for a few minutes, came back, and he said, "Switzer," he said, "I'm sorry, that is your initials, but in front of Cincinnati, Ohio, that's Navy recruiting station. And my name is Noah Robert Switzer, NRS." Well, anyway, all of you folks out there can call me Noah, except the young man over there by the door, and he better call me Dad or I'll belt him one. But I am. I went to Hospital Corps School at Great Lakes, and that was about somewhere between March or April till June of 1943. They transferred me to the Naval Hospital in Portsmouth, Virginia. And 1 month while I was down there, I had the clock duty. I had to go around punching a clock on the things that was hanging on the wall so that they wasn't any fire or anything or any problem with the buildings. And this buddy of mine went and signed a thing on the bulletin board. He came and got me by the arm and pushed me over to the bulletin board. He says, "I want you to sign a piece of paper for me." Well, he signed up for parachute training with the Fleet Marine Force. And I told him, I said, "I don't want to be jumping out of an airplane with a parachute on and all that medical gear and canteens of water and all this stuff." Well, anyway, he talked me into it, so we were transferred from Portsmouth, Virginia, to San Diego, California. And when we got out there, they had brought all the troopers back from Bougainville and Guadalcanal and Tarawa and all those little islands and decommissioned them and sent them up to Camp Pendleton. Well, we ended up at Camp Elliott for field medical school, which lasted from, I don't know, I can't remember all of the dates, but I think it was somewhere around January, February, and part of March. And then when we got through with our field medical training, they sent us up to Camp Pendleton, and it put us with the 5th Marine Division Naval Hospital. And we were there for whatever long it took us to get our assignment to wherever we were going. And I ended up with I Company, 3rd Battalion, 28th Marine Regiment, 5th Marine Division. So I was a Navy Marine, gung-ho for a young squirt. And after we got through with our training at Camp Pendleton, we finally got on an old tub and headed for Hawaii. We got out to Hawaii and they run us through some more training and some more training. Well, January of 1945, they put us on a boat, or all I guess it was an APA, an attack transport for the 3rd Battalion, which I was attached to, an I Company, and I had a machine gun platoon, and all those guys called me Doc, because when they had a blister on their foot, I had to take care of that, or if they cut their finger, I had to take care of that, or whatever happened to them in the way of any kind of an illness or an injury. We did the best we could do about patching them up and taking care of them. So they had a lot of respect for us. And after we landed off of this ship, February the 19th on Iwo Jima, I glanced back down the beach and I could see a lot of explosions and bullets hitting in the water. And the man next to me was James Wilson, and I think, I'm not positive, but I think he was from Texas. So I grabbed him by the arm and I said, Jim, I said, this is no place for us. Let's get out of here. So we started scratching up the sand. We got up to a little ditch, and there was another man in there, and he happened to be the bugler of our company, and his name was Arthur Dan. I said, hey, Dan, I said, where's the company at? Dan said, I don't know, they're all over the place. Well, I saw 2 men in my platoon with a machine gun and a tripod and a box of ammunition take off out there on a run and set that gun down. They tried to pull, I guess they pulled a belt in there, and just about the time they was getting ready to put their finger on the trigger, a mortar shell landed right in front of that gun. So I said, okay, I said, here I go. So by the time I got there, this one man was laying there, and just about half of his head was missing from the mortar explosion. I felt of his pulse and listened to his chest and tried to get some breathing, but he nothing. And I knew that I couldn't do anything for him. The other man was groaning, so I gave him a shot of morphine, and I started cutting his clothes off, trying to throw a little sulfonilamide into his wounds and patch him up the best I could. And I don't know how I got him from there back to the ditch that I came from where Arthur Dan was at, but Arthur had called for a litter in the meantime, and when I got back with this wounded man, we put him right on a litter and they took him down to the beach, and I don't know what happened to him. Well, we fought with the Japanese on Mount Suribachi until the 23rd day of February, which they considered it sort of, yes, I just went blank. And I do that a lot. These guys over here, they might have a better brain than mine. But it was pretty secure, and they pulled I Company back maybe 100 yards or so, and we were sitting there in a little area designated as a rest area, trying to get squared away with a K ration or whatever they gave us to eat. And somebody hollered, hey, they're putting a flag up. So I looked up, and they put up a small flag. And then maybe, I don't know how long, but they said, hey, they're taking it down. The war must still be on. So somebody had sent one of the men in the Marine Corps out to a ship to get a bigger flag. Well, they got the bigger flag out, put it on that iron pole they had up there, and when they raised it, well, everybody raised their guns and fired off a few rounds, and you could hear them ships blowing their horn and everything else on the 23rd day of February 1945. They thought the war was over. It just started. We had 32 more days of hell. And I went from the southeast green beach of Iwo Jima around the base of Mount Suribachi, and then they put I Company along the west coast, and we went clear to the north end. And it seems like to me that we were fighting with the Japanese 36 hours a day, 9 days a week. But we were only there 36 days, and it was continuous combat, day and night. And it was hard to get a wink of sleep. And finally, I think after about 16 days, the Army brought up a little kitchen set up, and they brought us a hot meal. During the time that I was there, I saw the first B-29 come in for a landing. Those guys jumped out of that B-29, and they got down on their hands and knees and kissed the sands of Iwo Jima. From there on, I can't remember a whole lot of it because it was a long time ago. And as far as we finished up and captured the island for them, and our burial detail put over 6,800 in a temporary grave on Iwo Jima in the two cemeteries. One cemetery was the 5th Marine Division, the other one was for the 3rd and 4th Divisions. And here I am, a Navy man, wanting to be on a ship where I'd have a nice bunk to sleep in every night, and I'm out there sleeping in the rain and on the ground. Iwo Jima battle was over after 36 days. We went back to Hawaii. They put us right into training for the invasion of Japan. God forbid that we had to invade Japan, because if we had, the figures that I have heard of the lost American servicemen was approximately 1 million, and 6 to 8 million Japanese, 6 years old and up, we would had to have killed or been killed by them. So Truman had a good thought when he finally made the decision to let the Air Force B-29s take off from Saipan to Tinian and go up and bomb Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Thank the Lord they did, because otherwise I would not be here today, and you people wouldn't be listening to me flap my lips. Okay, I think that's about it for now. You'll have to come back next year if you want to hear me any more from me.
You know,
Thanks, Ray.
you know, there's a horrible statistic about those 36 days on Iwo Jima. The Japanese particularly like to kill medics, corpsmen, doctors. There were 827 corpsmen killed or wounded on Iwo Jima in 36 days. And we're blessed that you were not one of them. What he neglects to tell you is, and he's a humble man, as all these fellows up here are, but he's responsible for saving innumerable lives. And we thank you.
One thing I forgot to tell you. Everybody's making a hero out of me, and people stop their cars on the parking lots and on the street and roll their window down, and they holler Noah. Hey, how are you, Noah? More people know me by my first name, and all the way down to Hartford, Kentucky, where a young man is preaching at the Hartford Christian Church. because he told them all about me before I went down there with his dad, who is the minister of the Latonia Christian Church. And when I got there, everybody wanted to know about Iwo Jima. They wanted to know how old I was and how old I was when I went into the service. They wanted to know everything about me, but they all knew my name.
Well, you know,
Okay, that's it. Thanks, Ray.
you sit still, you sit still.
All right.
You just stay right there. We're not finished with you yet. And what we're working on now, you know, they just built the Ark down there in Williamstown. And I, for one, think that Noah ought to get a free pass to that every time he wants. And I hope I didn't appear to be rude or anything of that nature, because we only had 20 minutes apiece for these fellows. Maybe we can do this again sometime in the afternoon, because there are more to these stories than what you heard up here, of what they went through. But we wanted to now open it up to questions and answers from you folks. If you have a question, feel free to ask it.
Want the lights on?
Will you tell me what to do again?
I asked.
Oh,
I asked.
there you are. Yes, sir. Go ahead, stand there, right there. How old were you when you took command of that B-24?
Let's see, about 19.
19 years old. Right over in the first row there. Yes.
I got two questions. Number one, what happened to that ring of yours in high school? And number two, were you just stuck wearing a pink blouse for 16 months?
What happened to your ring, and how long did you have to wear that pink blouse? And did you wear it?
After the war, after the war, I wrote to this guy over there, and he gave me some kind of, we can't send gold out of the country. Well, my class 35, we had a reunion every month. We're the only class that did. We would go to Mike Fink's or the boathouse, and one of the men there, a son of one of my classmates, talked to the school, and the school talked to the maker of the ring, and they made a 1935 ring, but it was bigger than that Depression ring. They made it like the 2000 some ring was, and they presented it to me. So it's a little tight for my hand. I'm sorry I don't have it on, but they made a new ring for me. I'm the only 99-year-old man still wearing a high school ring.
What happened to the pink shirt?
Oh, hell, I don't know.
Sure that German SS officer didn't take it for his own pleasure?
He said maybe an SS officer took it for his own pleasure.
Yeah, that's possible. They did steal from us, I'll tell you that.
He was dressed for Sunday school that day.
Yes, ma'am. You hit it.
No, I did not perform any. They had OR tech, operating room technicians, who assisted doctors in the hospitals, like Portsmouth, Virginia. There was a lot of hospital corpsmen who were operating room technicians, but they didn't do the operation. They handed them, well, they were more or less like nurses, handing the scalpels and so forth to the doctors. Yes, we patched up what we could do. We did what we could do for them and transferred them back to the battalion aid station. The battalion aid station did what they could do for them and sent them on back to the Naval Hospital, which was way back as far as they could get them away from the actual front lines.
You'll have to use that microphone. Yeah, stand up, sir, and then that lady over there next. Have you had any trouble relating your experiences?
No, but my oldest son spent a year and a day over in South Vietnam, and he won't talk about his experience hardly at all, because from what I can understand through my daughter, I don't know whether he picked up a friend of his that was shot half in two or what, and put him into a helicopter that he was the crew chief of, and they evacuated this man out of there. But he hardly will speak about his experiences of it. But I don't mind talking about my military experience, because I'm proud of what I did for my country, and I'll tell you what some of these politicians have done to my country. It makes me mad enough I could bite a railroad nail in two.
The lady right back there in red wanted to ask something. You want it? Okay, you're next then, go ahead. That young man over there then.
Did you take part in bombing Berlin?
He wanted to know if you took part in bombing Berlin.
No, I was shot down before we were bombing Berlin.
Yeah, Clarence, the fellow that just left,
He did.
the people that from Channel 19 want to talk to him, I guess in private, but he bombed Berlin 3 times.
Harry, the big tunnel, was a British one. We had tunnels in the center compound, but none of them ever got out. I did what they call duty pilot. We had a barracks which was right opposite the gate where all the German soldiers had to come in. And I would sit there with a pad and mark every German that came in, and anybody that was doing any clandestine operations would come in, and I could tell them where the Germans are, so that if they approached the barracks where there's some hammering or something, before that German got in there, they'd be embroidering, you know. But, I don't go in tunnels.
You know, actually, just a brief note about that Great Escape. Initially, the Americans that were there in August of 42 to September of 43 were tunnel diggers and Tom, Dick, and Harry. And one of our men who was a member of our breakfast group, Tom Griffin, a Doolittle Raider, Tom dug tunnels for one day, and he said he put me in another job. There were no Americans in the Great Escape. They had all been moved out of the North Camp into South Camp and into the center camp where Bob was. Yes?
Yes, I was only involved in Iwo Jima.
That's enough.
Yes, that was the only combat I saw during the war.
Yeah, well, that was enough. That was enough. No.
Question for Noah. Just curious, could you give me the your opinion on what the average GI thought about the U.S. diverting most of the materials to take care of the European theater as opposed to the Pacific?
Well, I have no idea what went on over in the European theater. I just, from what I've heard, you know, to me, I've never talked to anyone who was a medic over there, and I guess their job was just about the same as mine. When they heard somebody was hit, or if somebody said medic, then they had to get up and try to figure out where the injured person was at and go to them. But on that little island over there, when I got up, many a times I've heard a steel hornet go by my head. And some of them were mighty close. And I'll tell you, that was an eerie feeling to know that there's some guy out there with a rifle shooting at me.
Did you all think you had were supplied with all the equipment that you needed, or do you feel you were supplied with all the equipment that you all needed there in the Pacific?
He's talking about the logistics, and you know, there's a school that says a lot of equipment was diverted to the European theater instead of the Pacific theater.
The theory behind that was if we divide our arms half and half, either the Germans will win the war or the Russians will win the war, and that would have been catastrophe anyway. So about 2/3 at least of planes, I mean everything, went to Europe first so that they could do Europe and just hold the Pacific. But the Pacific, we did. We got much more arms and all kind of equipment than the Pacific did.
Okay, thank you.
Let me apologize. I wear hearing aids, and I have a problem with these ears.
Was there any communication at all with home? Did you have any communication at home when you were
In the prison
in
camp?
the prison camp, or when you were fighting? Was there any type of
As a
communication?
lieutenant, I could write 3 letters a month and 4 postcards. We could get as much mail as came in. I got a lot more mail than almost everybody there. I had a lot of friends, and I do it. And my wife kept one of them. I still have that. It must have been the best letter. I don't know, but she didn't keep any of the other ones. And I had kept theirs. When the Russians came, we had to pack everything in a pack, and I threw it away. The only thing I kept was a logbook that the YMCA had given each one of us.
Yeah, I could write letters. I could write letters home, and I received letters from home while I was in the Pacific, but that was about it. We didn't get all this telephone things that they're sending over to these guys over there at Desert Storm and in Iraq and everywhere now. And all I had to do is write free mail up here on the corner when I was in there.
Yeah.
This is for Noah. As a Marine, I just want to say that we always prized our Navy corpsmen, our docs. We loved you guys. But you said that you were going to go for training and jump out of an airplane. Did you ever do that? And if you did,
No.
You didn't?
No, I'm glad I didn't. I'd have broke both legs and probably both arms and everything else. They brought all the troopers back from the islands all over the Pacific that was out there, and it just wasn't feasible for paratroopers in those islands.
This question's for Noah. While you were on Iwo Jima, did you happen to have the misfortune of working on anyone that was from your unit that you actually knew at the time that was shot, or, you know?
Yes, I did. One of the men in my platoon, I don't know how he did it or what really happened, but hit him in the hind end with about 6 machine gun bullets that came out in his stomach here, and his guts were all hanging out. And I'll tell you,
Thank you, Noah.
another? Yes, young lady.
This is for Robert. What was it like being in the prison camps?
What was it like being in a prison camp?
Well, the main thing I can remember is being hungry. We were never hungry to the extent that we were emaciated. I went in at 165. I lost 25 pounds, which is just lose weight. I got on a ship coming home and I put it back on more than I lost. We got on a ship and we said, boy, we'll be in New York in a week. We get out to sea and the captain says, we're not going right to New York. I've got cargo here for Trinidad. Well, we had the radio and the German news. We knew about Sinatra and all this. Trinidad, rum and Coca-Cola. We get to Port of Spain, Trinidad, and the captain gets on. He says, if you think I'm going to let 1,000 prisoners of war loose in Port of Spain, I never get you back on. So we sat on the deck of that ship in that tropic sun, and when I got off in New York, I looked like I'd been pregnant. I got black and white, black and white, black and white. I got heavier than I had ever been. When I got married, I got married in November 45, and I was heavier than I had ever been in my life. I was always about 150 pounds, but we didn't really get that starved. We had food. It wasn't always good, but there was times when, well, normally we'd be talking about flying and girls and travel and girls and. But when food was scarce, all they talked about was food. You'd wake up in the middle of the night and there's two guys saying, how does your wife or mother fix this? Or what's the best restaurant in Paris, Kentucky? Or some other thing. Never going to get there, but that's all you could think about was food. We were never cold except when we left Saigon in the worst winter they had. We were cold then. We slept. The first night we kept walking, but the next day we got the Germans let us go into a Lutheran church, and we put 1,000 men in there. We were on the floor and in the crypt and all over everything, sleeping like spoons. I mean, to get warm. But I was lucky, as I say, in Stalag Luft 3. We were never starving. We were never really freezing. I can't say that about. North of, they had a prison camp, Stalag Luft 4 and Stalag Luft 1, and they were colder up there. They were farther north. But I don't mean we were in a country club, but we had a lot of benefits that none of the Japanese prisoners got. If you want to read a good book, there's a book called Nightingale, and it's all about this pilot escape line that was trying to get. I was with them for 3 weeks. It's a good book, very popular.
During World War II, the German Luftwaffe was made up of, that's just, for lack of better words, a higher class German. At least they thought they were. And they had a code of conduct that was a lot different than the Gestapo or the SS or some of the Wehrmacht. And they treated our airmen much better than they did our soldiers in POW camps, especially those POW camps in Italy. But there was somewhat of a mutual respect between these fighter pilots. You got to remember, this was in the early stages of our Air Force, you know, and there was a certain elitism about it. They weren't like our mud soldiers and like my father. And I'd like to pay a tribute to my father here while we're here, and my grandfather. My dad was in the 4th Division, 12th Regiment, and fought in Europe as a combat infantryman. At the same time, my grandfather was fighting the Japanese on New Guinea, and at the invasion of the Philippines, October the 20th of 44. My dad's name was George W. Hughes, and my grandfather's name was Harold L. Powell. Right there. What, do you want some water? Go.
For Noah and Robert, have you been back to Iwo Jima and to Germany since
I have not. My wife and I prefer to see this country. I would love to have gone back, but no, I have not.
I'm like him. I have not set foot on Iwo Jima because there's a lot of things in Kentucky I haven't seen in my lifetime, and I'd rather see them than go back to Iwo Jima.
Incidentally,
That guy's had me up since 5 o'clock this morning. This is my third outing today, and I'll tell you, I'm getting a little bit sleepy, and I think I'm gonna head for the sack.
and, we'll be over here in about 10 minutes. Incidentally, the folks here, Noah and I have visited one of the flag raisers' grave on Iwo Jima, and that's PFC Shousley, if I remember correctly, Franklin Shousley, buried down here in Fleming County, Kentucky. And we'll be going back there on February the 19th to pay our respects at his gravesite. Noah goes every year. A few more questions.
I don't have so much of a question as I do a statement about these three gentlemen. I've had the honor to know Mr. Doolan for 50 years since I was a very young man, and he represents truly the best of his generation, as these three men do, because when he got back to the United States, his service did not stop. He went on to be a scoutmaster for the next 50 years and led thousands of boys through tens of thousands of hikes and trips around the United States. And it was my honor to be one of his scouts. And he still has a tremendous following at 100 that is matched by no other man in my life. He was a second father figure to thousands of boys. And if we would have more of these type of gentlemen as examples to our young men today, we would become the country that we once were.
Amen.
One of them was that my father was on a destroyer at Okinawa. It was hit by a kamikaze, and I have a ship's history I wanted to give the fellow that didn't show today. And I was attached to the Fleet Marine Force, Dental Tech Corpsman, 6872, Navy Corpsman.
Thank you for your service.
For Robert, as a prisoner of war in the camp, was there communication on a daily basis with the guards? Did the German guards speak any English, and did you learn any German to communicate with them?
If you lived in Cincinnati, you already knew some German. I did not, obviously I learned a little more there, yes. But most of our many of our German guards had been German Air Force in World War I. A few of them were rather stupid. Some of them were tricky. We could bribe some. Only our escape committee was allowed to bribe, otherwise the price would go way down and the price would go up. And if we wanted something for the tunnel, for instance, they had them give them a camera. And we were, ordinary people were not allowed to bribe Germans. But there were a few that would take a bribe and then tell their superior. But by and large, as I say, a few of them were stupid. some of them had been flyers in World War I. Two of them, their attitude was such that after the war, we brought them over here to our reunion. We also brought the German, one of the higher rank officers over, because there was never, in our relationship, they never overstepped the proper balance of that relationship.
I hope you don't mind. I'd like to make one comment here. I think it's relevant to everything, because wars are horrible things, and yet there's something that goes beyond that. That's what the real purpose of what our life is all about, and I'd like to share that. My father, of course, was I said earlier, was a Pearl Harbor survivor. Later in my life, I was in high school, and I accepted Christ as my Savior and became a Christian, and I was involved in an organization that would have monthly organizational meetings, and they bring people in that have movies, that have singing groups, whatever. One time they brought in a gentleman, an old Japanese gentleman, and he was telling us about his involvement with the war and how God had saved him from being killed in Nagasaki because he had gotten orders to leave 2 days before to go up to Tokyo. Come to find out, this was Mitsuo Fuchida, the man who actually led the raid on Pearl Harbor. After the war, he had become a believer in Christ, and he was a pastor in Washington State. And I got the privilege of meeting him, and he signed my little pocket Gideon New Testament. His favorite verse was Luke 23:34, which is, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And I'd just like to share that as a personal comment of someone whose father had to go through that horrible experience, and yet there has to be forgiveness, there has to be healing, or life, we can't always be hating each other. So I just want to share that with you all.
In the prison camps that I know of, we had, first of all, we had a French chaplain, and the Mass was still in Latin, so it didn't make any difference. Then we got an English chaplain, and eventually we got a Presbyterian chaplain, and we had a Church of Scotland chaplain, and we were allowed to have Mass and other religious ceremonies. I'll add one personal note to Tony. I feel that's why I'm in good health. My troop did a lot of hiking, 8, 10, 15, 16 miles, and I was still doing that when I was 68 years old. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm so healthy. I mean, the Lord's good to me. And, but...
I was just told that we have to break, but I want to add one more thing to that gentleman back there that gave his life to Christ. There were 8 Doolittle Raiders captured by the Japanese after the raid, and they were in prison. 3 were executed right away, and another one starved to death while he was in the Japanese POW camp. 4 survived. One of the Doolittle Raiders made a promise to God while he was there, that if he lived, he would devote his life to Christ. So he went on to divinity school and became a minister, and he went back to Japan, and he spent 30 years in Japan teaching Christianity to the Japanese. And you may know this and you may not. One of his first converts was Mitsuo Fuchida, the first fighter pilot to bomb Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941. He converted to Christianity and traveled with our Doolittle Raider around Japan and the United States, preaching the gospel of Christ. I wanted to add that footnote to that. And that concludes our evening. And thank you so much. It's a wonderful turnout. And one more hand for our boys.